So this context is from a company actually out of South Africa who gives the opportunities of having local boutique retailers the ability to actually stock local brands. So it's an easy way for them to actually source and sell new local content or local products. So this email is a cold, again, one-step sequence to try to get stockists, they're called, I guess the people who run the retail stores, they want to book a demo with this customer or with this seller.
Okay, Jeff, I wish it just said the way you described it in the first two sentences. I wish that was the whole email. Like what you said was so clear. It's like, hey, it helps local boutique retailers carry local sourced items. It's like a little tiny ad, and it's like, would that be of interest to you? Boom. Like if I'm, a supplier, I'm interested because that was a very clear description. B2B wholesale marketplace, very buzzword, like it gets too far. And then when I saw the subject line, there's a little bit of a language barrier there, I think potentially, like will sell at, like let's use outreach. So local brands that will sell at outreach. I assume that means that outreach is the target of the selling motion, which is a little confusing visually, like if you think about that.
Right.
So I would say, man, just swap out whatever you just said, Jeff. Put that at the beginning of the email, put out the rest. You're good to go.
A nice one-liner with a question at the end kind of thing.
It was a very clear value prop. I mean, I get how it works.
Right on.
Yeah, I totally agree. The only thing I'll add on top of that is I think you did a great job, and that should be like in the value prop, but you could also even take it a step further, and maybe the first sentence is trying to uncover the pain. So that's what you do. What would these stockists be? What's the pain they're feeling? Do you struggle sourcing, local products? Something as simple as that. And again, going to the mobile, if I see, do I struggle with sourcing products and I am having that pain or challenge, I'm going to open up and see what's going on.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that, Scott, just a little bit more context, is that the way that these companies used to source local products is that they'd go to farmer markets or trade shows. And so they would go on these buying trips to find things in person. And now that that's off the table, they are actually running into problems sourcing products because it's literally like a third of how they do their work.
Jeff, do you sell for this company?
I do not.
You're very good at this.
Meeting after meeting.
Yeah.
Jeff, you'd be a cold calling king at these people. Yeah, that's huge. Be like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what has replaced your buying trips now that COVID has hit? Like, that's very specific, and that's probably on all of their minds, as long as you're targeting the right people.
Right.
Yeah. I think just because I was thinking about, like, how would I put this into outreach, right? Because, like, if I'm using a tool like outreach, I'm instantly thinking, where are all the customizations I can do? What are the fields that are going to make this feel more personalized? And I don't see anything about the locations. I don't see the number of locations. I don't see the actual physical locations. Like, hey, are you having trouble sourcing products from Indianapolis, right? Like Indianapolis-based retail or like, creators, whatever it is, like that one little thing that would put it over the edge to like, oh, this is for me, right? Like there's the question, and then tailoring that question to your specific location would be really cool. Or like, hey, I noticed you have locations like this one, this one, and this one. Instead of doing buying trips, how are you getting those locally sourced items? It's just, there's just a little bit of extra detail you can get from the data, plug it right into the email. It's going to feel more specific to them. And then you get that personalized email feel without having to do that ridiculous amount of personalization.
Yeah, that makes sense, Rex. I mean, when you're talking about a company that, like, the buyer is going to be a company that is local, that has an address, there's so many cool things you can do with location that are personalized, that don't take hours to do pre-call research.
Yeah.
Right. No, good point. Good point. So I'm noticing a trend with both of you that it seems like asking for 20 minutes to talk is almost like passé. It's almost just not something that people do as much anymore. And why is that? Why are you showing a bias towards removing that whole give me 20 minutes to talk?
Look, in a first email, if you're not planning to send any other emails and that's the only thing you want to get out of it is like the cream off the top, okay. but you're not going to start a lot of conversations. I think Scott's point on the last email is like, your goal is just to get a response. You want to have some starting point for a conversation. And over cold email, especially a very saturated channel like cold email, that's really hard. Every conversation you can earn is a foot in the door, even if it's a no and a reason for the no. Then like, let's go earn more of those rather than just really trying like, hey, 7% response rate is really good. Like I would be happy with a 7% response rate on the average cold email.
Yeah.
But that's not enough conversation. Especially if like, hey, you're booking some meetings and you get this false flag like, yes, we're doing super well. We never need to adjust this email. But in reality, maybe it could have been much better. Maybe you're leaving some money on the table because this is a unique product in a marketplace that it sounds like could very much benefit from it. So maybe 7% is half of the potential here. So we think we're doing really well, and we're not actually capturing everything we could. So I would say like the 20 minutes is, if that's the only email you're going to send, sure. Like ask them very specifically, here's the thing I want from this interaction. I think there's a lot more you can gather from it.
Well, thanks, Rex. And there's one more thing that you mentioned in here that people have to remember as well. Is I get asked all the time, what should my open rate be? What should my response rate be? Right? And those are, and you probably do too, Rex. You probably do too, Scott. And what you just said was so important, though, is that 7% is better than normal. It's 7 times better than the industry average. But like you said, this is a very unique product in a unique place. And it could, who knows, this could get 30% with the right tweaks.
Yep.
Right. And you don't know the limit with this type of email until you really put in a lot of these best practices we're talking about into it to get it to a point where you're maximizing the effectiveness of the time that you're spending on cold outbound.
Yeah. Scott, I'd love to hear your take on that too.
Yeah, I think you did a great job summing up. Like the 20 minutes to talk, if you have, a small total addressable market, like Rex said, you're kind of going to be burning through it and just getting that like 0.01% who are like, oh, I had that problem today, the needle in the haystack. And you got to warm them up. You have to educate them. It's kind of like asking someone to marry you before you took them on the first date. It's too much too soon. And again, it depends on who you're selling into. But like if you're sending this to an executive, who has 20 minutes to talk to a stranger when you haven't illuminated a problem yet, really, for me, or educated me on a problem. So that's my 2 cents on that. I do want to reiterate something Rex said, which is huge. I talked about this last week in my newsletter, is you getting hyper creative with the way that you're using like dynamic fields can make, and there's this huge push towards personalization. Everyone's like, if you don't fully personalize, you're the worst person ever. But there's a way, trust me, if you're creative enough, you can create an automated email that no one's going to tell that it was automated, right? So Rex gave a great point of just adding location to this. So you could see where your prospect is. They're in Indianapolis. You can easily pull that field. You could probably even go a step further. If you wanted to do a little bit of homework up front, add a custom dynamic field in there, get a VA to go through all the companies and see what products they source, and just quickly put a custom field in there. $9 on Upwork to do that. Create a custom field in Outreach and then put that in. Are you having trouble sourcing insert product? That's going to be really, really powerful and get their attention.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think there's a creative way to take that to the next level too. Like I think the second email, or maybe the first email instead of this one, could be like in the subject line, name the specific item sourced locally ? And like that like, they're gonna recognize their own product type, and they're gonna say like, what do you mean sourced locally? Hey, are you currently sourcing these local? We have a marketplace where we can find those people for you, since you're no longer able to go on trips and find these yourselves. Plus it'll save you time even if you can. Like, man, like that's, Scott, you could take that to the next level. I love that idea of having somebody go search for the product itself.
Cool.
Yeah. Those little things that you just got to let your mind go there. And sometimes it seems like a lot of manual work up front. You got to think, if you're putting them through a 12-step sequence, you do that once up front and you have that, information forever. And again, utilizing VAs for some of these tasks can be really helpful. Even if you're an IC, it's worth it.
Yeah, I love that.
Awesome. So with that said, what do we think are 3 key takeaways for this particular email?
I'd say take advantage of dynamic fields if you have the luxury of it, which hopefully you have a sales engagement.
Find a way to get the luxury of it because it's becoming table stakes.
Yeah.
Right? Like
There you go.
honestly,
Yeah.
it's not the days when everybody just signed up for that free trial of Yesware and went to town on it. Like we need the dynamic fields. If we're not going to personalize every single one and spend hours on it, we need those dynamic fields for sure.
Right. And what's another best practice that we can, or key takeaway from this one?
I
What
think
do we talk about? Can we quickly go back?
if we think about the subject line was a real struggle for me. So like that was your first impression, right? Was local brands that will sell at. And I recognize that like maybe that's because you're talking about a store, so like that will sell at Nordstrom.
Right.
But like the verb sell is a little confusing there. So it conflicts in my head. So I'd say take extra care of the language around the subject line and first line, similar to the last email, but like specifically the subject line is critical here.
So think critically on your subject line.
Yep.
And then I would say simplify value prop and illuminate pain.
Yeah.
Really what you're trying to do. You know, they confused the value prop too much and they didn't really dig into the pain very well of what they would be experiencing right now in this very unique situation that we all find ourselves in.
Right. Good stuff. Thanks. So now we're going to be moving on to kind of just an invite. So some of you on the call today have actually submitted your work and you're actually watching us review it live. But for those that have not submitted their work yet to be reviewed by the panel, we do offer this opportunity once every 2 weeks on sequence practice. So please go to revup90.com/submissions to submit your cold emails, phone calls, phone scripts, and sequences.